Hello everyone, very good afternoon. Today we have Dr. Khushboo Sinha, a dedicated researcher and educator with a doctoral in business administration from the University of West Scotland, London campus. Doctoral research focused on investigating consumer attitude towards adoption of cryptocurrencies, where she developed innovative models combining technology adoption, consumer psychology, trust, and risk theories. Dr. Khushboo has extensive experience mentoring high school and undergraduate students through all stages of researches, from idea generation to data analysis and publication. She has also worked internationally in academia, corporate project management, and market research, and has expertise in both quantitative and qualitative research methods. With her diverse background in economics, management, psychology, and public health research, Dr. Khushboo brings a unique perspective on how learners can learn and engage with impactful projects and get their work published. Welcome, Dr. Khushboo here.
Thank you, Dr. Niharika. Thank you so much for your introduction here.
Okay, we are glad to have you here, Dr. Khushboo. So, Dr. Khushboo, I would like to know your opinion that for many high school students, research feels like, intimidating to them, that it's something very new and how can they do it? What advice would you give to a beginner who want to start their first research project?
I think, a lot of students imagine that researchers just sit down and know everything from day one. And honestly, in my opinion, like even professional researchers feel nervous when they start anything new. But the difference is that they have learned that research isn't about having all the answers well in advance. It's more about being curious enough to be able to find them. So if you can spot something interesting about how the world works, maybe a behavior you must have noticed, a pattern you can't stop thinking about, and then you start taking small steps towards figuring it out, you have already started doing your research. And it can start with simply asking a question. For example, does using AI tools change how creative students are in their projects? Or do countries with higher income inequality have lower levels of happiness? So once you have got that question, it's about letting your curiosity lead the way and noticing the connections, exploring different angles, and being open to where the idea or your interest area takes you.
That's so interesting to know. And, I clearly understand that, initially you should not have an answer to everything, but one question brings another question, and the third question, fourth question, and then slowly you'll have an answer to all other related questions. And that's what I think research is. I completely agree. You have mentored high schoolers in getting their work published. Could you walk us through the key steps from having an idea to seeing it in a academic journal, renowned academic journal?
I worked with high school students, and some of them are as young as 14, and who have gone from just spark of an idea to seeing their names in a real index journal. And it usually starts with finding a focused question, as I said, and something meaningful. It is important to make it doable with the time and resources that they have. And then we look what's already out there, the existing research. And it doesn't mean like drowning in hundreds of research papers, but just reading enough and relevant enough to spot where they can bring a fresh perspective or a new angle to what they want to understand, what they want to figure out. And from there, we design the study, and it could be surveys, interviews, or working with existing data. And then comes collecting and analyzing the data. And that's when exactly the things get really interesting, because that's when you start seeing your results take shape. And after that, we write it up so it's clear, structured, and tells the story of their research. And finally, we have to find the right journal, one that welcomes high school submissions. And so I think the goal is to make sure it's academically solid, but still theirs in every way. And I've seen that when that acceptance email comes in, it's the moment they'll never forget in their life.
Yeah, I completely agree. When I, as a doctoral student, I mean, I was not that fortunate that, in high school I got a platform to do a research. But as a doctoral student, when I got my first acceptance in an index journal, oh my God, that day I still cannot forget. But you also understand, as a first time, when anyone does anything for the first time, they tend to make some mistakes. The same thing goes with the high schoolers. So, in your experience, what are some common mistakes students they make when they are trying to get their work published in some renowned academic journal, and how can they avoid it according to you?
So, one thing I often see is students underestimating the importance of clarity. So, you might have done amazing research, but if the way you explain it is too complicated or filled with jargon, readers and reviewers can miss how good it really is. And publishing isn't just about being accurate. It's about making your work easy to understand for someone reading it for the first time and someone who is new to the domain. And another common mistake is rushing to the final stage. By the time you are writing and formatting, you might be tired and eager to submit. But that's when exactly when you need to slow down. You have to check your references, make sure your figures and tables are clear enough, and ensure that the paper flows logically from start to finish. And many students don't give themselves enough time for revisions after feedback. And feedback is not a sign that it's something went wrong, especially in research. It's basically an opportunity to make your work stronger before it is out there in the world. So I think my advice is to keep your writing very clear. Don't rush the final touches and treat feedback as part of the process and not a setback.
I completely agree. Feedback from anyone, rather from reviewers or from your mentor, it's something very important. And at the end, you need to slow down. I mean, you need to have a lot of patience and check your references. So, how do these students, when they're involved with so many things, how can they balance creativity, with academic rigor to make their research both interesting and credible for publication?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And I think when I think of creativity and academic rigor, I see them as two things that work best together. Um, Creativity is what makes your research stands out, and it might be an unusual question, a fresh perspective, or a new way of looking at something familiar. And academic rigor is what makes it trustworthy, the way you collect your data, analyze it, and present it with evidence. So, for example, a creative idea might be studying how the color of a classroom affects students' concentration or how playlists reflect mood. So, but to make that credible, you still need to have a very clear method, like deciding on how you'll measure concentration, keeping conditions consistent, or using a reliable way to record mood changes. So, if you only focus on creativity, you might have an existing idea, but not enough solid proof to back it up. And if you only focus on rigor, you might have strong results, but without any fresh perspective, that won't stand out in the world or be remembered. So I think the balance really comes from starting with a question you genuinely care about. That's why I always tell my students to come up with something that they are really interested in, that they really some students come up and they really want to make some changes in the society. And it can start with something very small, and then you can build on the process that you rely on. That means like using trustworthy methods, checking your data carefully, and communicating your findings in a way that highlight their relevance and value. So when you get both the sides right, your research isn't just credible, it's kind of work people really remember.
Yeah, I mean, I completely get it. It's like, cooking food is something else, but serving them and garnishing them, that is the
That
most
makes a difference.
important part. Yeah, that makes a difference. So thank you, Dr. Khushboo, for having been here. We are so happy to have you and to interact with you. Thank you for such wonderful suggestions and point, you shared with these young researchers. So to all the viewers over here, let me tell you one thing. The most exciting thing about research is that it's yours. So you decide where to look, how to explore it, and what story it tells. So there is no right or wrong. Some journeys are quick, maybe others, they take time. But research definitely teaches you something valuable. So what matters most is staying curious, asking questions that mean something to you, as Dr. Khushboo mentioned, and not being afraid to just go along the way. So your project might start with something very small, but it can grow into something much bigger, which is more meaningful to anyone and maybe to the society as a whole. And one day you'll look back and realize that it wasn't just about the paper or publication. It was about how much you grew while creating it. Interested to start your research journey? Visit our website www.globalarhub.org and feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you so much.